What's your "it cannot possibly get worse" moment that actually got worse? Former roommate's insane ex-girlfriend left her chihuahua at our place. Chihuahua gets into fight with another one of our dogs and unfortunately doesn't survive. Terrible. Girlfriend and I are the only ones home. We inform crazy and let roommate know. I clean up. Roommate comes home from work and we conduct funeral rites. Interred in backyard at about 9 p.m. Very respectful. Offerings made to the old gods, as she requested. An hour later, crazy calls. Says she's coming back for the dog. Lives 3 hours away in a different city. We try to impress on her the butcheredness of driving for 3 hours with an already buried and 4 hours deceased dog. She disagrees with our assessment. She arrives at about 1 a.m. with several young men in tow in an attempt to intimidate roommate into digging up dog. Roommate way bigger than young men, so they go to plan B. Police contacted. Police arrive. Demand dog be disinterred. Go back to doing important things. Leave around 3 a.m. Roommate begins to dig. Crazy breaks down and realizes how batshit she is. Crazy attempts to fight girlfriend. Girlfriend way bigger, so she goes with plan B and leaves. No one sleeps. Girlfriend and I take our dog, not the murderer, to dog park to try and bleach our brains of the last 12 hours. Great time. Had fun. Drive home from dog park exhausted. Forget to check twice when making a left-hand turn. Get T-boned. Total girlfriend's car. Worst 12 hours ever. I was baking a cake for my dad as a surprise because he got a new job at a really good company. He was working so hard all his life and now has what he deserves. For that, I wanted to congratulate him a cake. When I was about to melt some chocolate for the decoration, I accidentally burned my whole hand in hot chocolate. I cried but kept going. After a while I realized that the cake had a weird texture and I tried a crumble. It tasted salty. I added salt instead of sugar. I had to throw it away and run to the store to buy new ingredients. It was 7 p.m. at the time and my father would arrive at 8 p.m. I hurried and bought everything. When it was time to pay I saw that I had only brought $3 with me and had to go home to get money. I was frustrated at this point. After my shopping experience I got home and I thought it couldn't get any worse. I forgot that I had some potatoes with cheese in the oven and forgot them there. I rushed into the kitchen hoping that it didn't burn. I opened the oven and saw a black potatoes. It smelled awful. I have asthma, so I had to use my inhaler because the smell made me cough so hard. Everything was not working and I made a huge mess. I now laugh about it, but I know I will never bake a cake again. Some years ago I was rejected by a guy that I really liked. The following year I saw him again, and he acted as though he was finally ready to give us a chance. I'd just gotten over him, sort of, and was trying to keep things friendly. But I was naive and fell for it. We had a one-night stand when I wanted a relationship. He left again, and over the course of a year I realized that he wasn't going to try to make us work. Many tears were shed and much trust was lost. I'd never ever wanted to have a one-night stand. That's not who I am. However, I still wanted to remain a friend to him because he happens to be a very close friend of my brother-in-law. What a fool I was. Not long after, he lied about wanting to keep in touch and ghosted me on the very same day he announced he has a girlfriend. Little did I know that love on my part could lead to all this heartache and embarrassment. The story of this guy in my life is filled with moments where I thought it cannot possibly get any worse. I'm thankfully completely over him now, but it's hard to forget how much of a fool I was for him. I was at school when I was on 3 grade or 2 grade. Then I behaved badly today, so my teacher said that she was gonna tell my parents what I did. Then I screamed while crying, "Please don't. My parents are gonna slap me." Then she got a little scares because I live in Finland and it's illegal to hit kids there. Then my teacher called the cops. Then maybe yesterday my mom told me that we are going to the police office, going to have a talk. We are on different places inside of the police officer, so we couldn't hear each other. Then I was asked, "What did your parents hit you with?" Then I drew the thing they hit me with. Then I said they stopped hitting me. Then it ended few minutes later. Then my mom came to me and said, "Why did you tell them how I hit you? I could have been in prison for a year with your father." Then I went crying at my sister and I room. Then dad came. Mom told everything about what happened. Dad wasn't happy, but was a little angry. This happened when I was 7 years old. Now I'm 12, and they are good parents and don't hit me. They are from Africa, a little like me. Sorry if some of the parts are badly written. Writing this on mobile and English is not my first language. Years ago, I went to my car, which had been parked on the street during an ice storm. It was incredibly cold. I couldn't get the key in the lock that long ago because of the ice. Carefully chipped off some ice and used a de-icer for the rest. Got into the cat and found it wouldn't start. Got out of the car and realized I couldn't close the door because it had froze open while I was trying to start the cat. BF managed to start the car and close the door. We then realized that the car had froze to the street and wouldn't move. Rocked the car free from the ice, went to the end of the block, and found that my brakes didn't work at all. Quickest plowed into a snowbank to avoid hitting another car. Then realized I couldn't get my car into reverse, which meant that the right corner of the car had to stay buried in the snowbank. Walked back to my place, slipped on the ice-covered stairs, twisted as I went down, fell on my arm, and broke it. Not as bad as some people here, but it was the week before I was taking a vacation with a friend, and I had planned out to have some extra money outside of the money for the trip. I got 2 new tires for my car, $350, and took it in to have an airbag light checked out. Ended up needed $1,200 of repairs. Airbag was essentially not working. Get home from dropping the car off to get fixed, hating that this happened right before my trip, and the refrigerator was no longer working. Compressor was our, and it would have been expensive enough to replace it that it made more sense to buy a new one. There's another $1,300. That weekend, in the middle of my 6 12-hour shifts in a row right before my trip, my wife calls and says the air conditioner is not working. Ended up only being the thermostat, but it was another $175. So yeah, felt like I would never get to the trip. I was at work with 5 minutes to close, then all of a sudden droves of people came in. I said this couldn't get any worse, and that's when some guys started a brawl in the line over who was in front of who. I shrugged my shoulders and announced that we were closing soon. I try to never go to a place to eat 20 minutes before their closing time. I know everyone is just praying no one comes in, and I don't want to be that person. Thanks for not being that guy. This happened to me. I worked at a restaurant on the beach, so a tad pricey. Literal school bus of teenagers walked in 10 minutes before closing. I wasn't too nervous. I figured when they saw the $18 cheeseburger they wouldn't stay. Nope. Table of 25 teenagers, me and my manager had to set up. About 2 hours later we are now attempting to split the check 25 ways and they arguing who is paying for the 2 appetizers. This girl got like a $10 tip after all that. 2 years ago I dropped out of college to join the United States Air Force. Living in the northeast coast all my life I wasn't used to the Texas heat. One day in BMT the heat was unbearable and I started to pass out. Then was sent to the clinic, which they discovered I had a heart-related issue that disqualified me from joining, but I had to get medically cleared to separate before they gave me the boot. They pulled me out of my flight and into medical hold. A wingman and I marched to the BX where I saw some of my buddies from my old flight. They were in their dress blues practicing for graduation. Cut to a week later, and they sent me home the day I was supposed to graduate. When my possessions were given back to me, the first thing I went to do was text my now ex, who I was going to propose to, that I was coming home, and she broke up with me. I wasn't even on the plane home yet. A few weeks later I found out she was with someone else. Thank you, Air Force. So, when I was 14, I woke up in serious abdominal pain. I went to the ER, and when there I was screened. All signs pointed towards appendicitis, but nothing was concrete yet. The pain, getting worse, was maybe the most painful thing ever in my life. Maybe second, but horrific. I thought I would have surgery and would be okay. Oh boy, was I wrong. I got a CT scan, and the results saw nothing. Literally nothing. So the nurses did tests. After 2 hours, they had a result. My lymph nodes in my abdomen were infected, and there was nothing I could do. They initially took this idea off the list of possibilities because after 12 to 13, there were almost no cases of this infection. I was 14, almost 15, and so they considered it impossible for me to get. In the end, I had extremely horrifying pain in my abdomen for weeks. Terrible, into worse. Lost my business too, among other things, a frivolous lawsuit, and crippling attorney fees. Doubled down on myself, scraped up my savings, took out a student loan, and went back to school for a master's degree. Trying to thread the needle financially, working part-time, had a horrific week, where water heater died, then a completely unrelated leak in the foundation flooded my bedroom. Daughter fell at recess, and had to go for raise, all piling on, but that's okay, this is rock bottom and we're okay. Transmission on my little Nissan Frontier blew out on a massive hill on campus 50 miles away, no way to get home, finally limp smoking and burning into a parking lot. Then got a parking ticket. Was 20 minutes late to a 2.5 hour lecture, and counted absent, and yeah, in grad school, in some courses, attendance is still a thing, which cost me an A. Yep, it can always get worse. This was 7 years ago. I had a miscarriage at 18 weeks. Thought it can't get any worse than this. 2 weeks later, and a week before my husband's birthday, his dad died suddenly at work of massive heart attack. It got worse from there. His grandma died a month later. Then my husband, through no fault of his own, lost his job and the home we lived in. Can't get worse, right? Wrong. Ended up moving into the one place that would take our dog, and it was cheap. It was a trailer park, and without knowing it, it was absolutely crawling with cockroaches, sand fleas, and horrible neighbors. When we moved 8 months later, had to move our stuff that was salvaged into a storage unit and bomb it. It took another year to completely get rid of the bugs. But seriously, 2012 was the year of it can't get any worse, and it did. I hope your family is doing better. This is kind of minor, but recent. I was watching my favorite team lose in the Champions League final, and thinking, well, isn't this just great? Then my 2-month-old foster daughter projectile vomited all over me. I imagine the "it cannot possibly get worse" moment was you realizing you're a Spurs fan. Hey now, I'll not have you besmirch my team, but you aren't totally wrong, because in that moment I'm realizing that this was their moment. With the players they have, it really feels like it had to happen now or never. This transfer window or the next, they are gonna lose quite a few people. The team won't be the same. Who's your team? Yeah, I'm an Arsenal fan, so my life is way worse, to be honest. You guys losing was a tiny consolation. The thing about Arsenal is, they always try to walk it in.